all of this stuff is happening at the same time that so many adults are saying, social media is not good for me. I'm getting off of such and such platform. There's just a lot of dissonance there. I'm not 100% ready to say it's bad for my kid because I'm not 100% ready to go toe-to-toe with my kid. And at the same time, I'll say it's bad for me, and I'm just making a choice to improve my mental health.
What you're speaking to is the blind leading the blind here.
It's a weird time.
Honest Women, the podcast for every woman who's trying to juggle the relationships, roles, and responsibilities that come with modern womanhood and finding it all just a little harder than she thought it would be.
Today, we're shining a light on a topic that's more urgent than ever: the impact of social media on our youth. Many of us are unaware of the dangers lurking online, and as mothers, we're constantly trying to navigate this digital landscape with our children. In today's episode, we get honest about the challenges we face and the strategies we're employing to protect our own children. Good morning, Andrea.
Good morning, Jess.
I feel like this is one of those episodes that is a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
Or more serious.
It's a serious topic, that's
for sure. It is a
sure.
serious topic versus some of our others where we can be a little bit goofier and funnier when we start.
Yes. I think you're right. It would be a little tone deaf for us to be the spazzy way that we usually are.
Yeah, and I feel like we can't. We need to rein it in a little bit here.
That's fair.
And there's a lot to cover.
Okay.
So I want to jump in.
Let's
do
it.
This is a topic that keeps me up at night. And I don't even have kids yet with smartphones that could be on social media. Well, they could be on social media, but no smartphones.
Yeah.
What about you?
We've got one smartphone in the house after 13 years. So this is definitely real. It's very present for us, and it is a constant issue already. Snapchat is coming up on a somewhat frequent basis, and figuring out how to navigate all of this, it is very stressful.
I'm glad you brought up Snapchat because I have to tell you something. When we were driving, because we're recording in studio today,
Yes, we are.
which I love. When I was driving in, I'm getting off the exit, right? Thinking about this episode, I already have immense anxiety related to social media and our children. There's a giant billboard off of one of the large expressways here in the Chicagoland area that says, are you ready?
Yes.
Keep kids off social media, join Snapchat.
What?
Yeah. Keep kids, I'm going to say it again, keep kids off social media, join Snapchat.
This is very confusing to me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead. Tell me why.
I'm going to really make a bold statement here.
Please do.
I believe that Snapchat is social media.
It is.
What the fuck?
I know. This is part of the problem. And I just had to start this episode with it because the irony of seeing that billboard when I was already actually at the time listening to an NPR episode that you sent me about social media and the negative impact it is having on our children.
Yep.
As I'm watching or as I'm looking at that billboard, which is false information.
It is false information. Also, if we're going to be ironic, we should mention that we're in studio recording for YouTube. Which we did debate a little bit.
We did debate on this.
I will not qualify as social media.
And I qualify as social media because they do the shorts now.
Yeah.
And so if we're looking at the shorts and that quick release thing, that's the only reason I'm calling it social media now.
Yeah, yeah. But I will say, I don't know. As a parent, actually, I'm also afraid of YouTube. But if our children want to watch educational, uplifting, deep thinking podcasts made by 40-something women, I support that.
That might be us.
100%. Yeah.
I don't even know if I support them listening to our podcast.
They probably should not.
Yeah, please don't.
Probably should not listen to our podcast.
No, but YouTube's another big one. And I think 100% of children are on YouTube right now. And in fact, I see it in the schools. We have it in our district. They watch stuff on YouTube. And here's the thing. It's another avenue you can't control. So here's where I want to start is we're going to read kind of some statistics that are out there right now that people might not be aware of.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, has issued a warning that social media use is a main contributor to depression, anxiety, and other problems in the nation's teenagers. This report was released in May of 2023 and calls attention to growing concerns about the effects of social media use on children and adolescents' mental health. Murphy goes on to call this youth mental health problem the defining public health issue of our time.
Those are strong words.
Strong.
Yeah.
Up to 95% of teens between the ages of 13 and 17 use social media. And in 2019, so let me go ahead and say that's pre-pandemic,
Right.
a study found teens who spent more than 3 hours a day on social media faced double the risk of experiencing poor mental health outcomes, including symptoms of depression and anxiety.
And like you said, the usage has been soaring. So 2019 was like, I don't know, child's play compared to how much people are using social media now. So in 2009, only about half of teens reported that they were using social media every day. But the most recent data says 95% are using it every day. And a third of teens that were asked say that they use it constantly. And as parents, I think sometimes we can be like, oh, that's not that much, right? We under-report or under-assume how much it is. That number was 22% of 10th grade girls say that they spend more than 7 hours a day on social media, which basically means every minute that they're not at school and that they're awake, they're on social media. And some of the minutes where they should be asleep, they're on social media.
That's insanity to me.
I know.
The Surgeon General's report also blames social media for perpetuating eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and low self-esteem. Some evidence also suggests a possible link between excessive social media use and ADHD in our teens, which we have seen skyrocket those numbers of ADHD in our country.
Absolutely. And neither one of us works with teens, but we will say we see mental health issues generally skyrocketing.
Well, I do work with teens.
Oh, I don't work with teens. I kind of wish I did. They're so weird.
I only do on a grief basis.
Okay,
right?
well, that
so
makes
it's very
sense.
limited.
That makes sense,
but-
yes. So this information, it is current. Like what we're talking about is incredibly current. This was just coming out in the last year, but this is not necessarily new.
No.
So there was a professor of psychology, a psychologist at San Diego State University her name is Jean, it's very hard to say, Twangy?
I think sorry, Jean.
Sorry.
Contact us if we said it wrong.
Sorry, Jean.
We wanna know
I
you
did listen
anyways.
to a podcast where they told us your name, and it was hard. So, but she actually sounded the alarm back in 2017, and she's a researcher who studies generations, and so she looks at differences in overall patterns between generations over time. And what she saw was that there were some really troubling mental health trends that started around 2011 or 2012, which, shocker, is when the majority of people started to use smartphones. And that was the rates of depression, anxiety, and loneliness. They went off the charts. So, you study for, 100 years, nearly 90 years, and then see this massive spike in those things. And so she started talking about this in 2017, and she was actually attacked by other psychologists, by the mental health community. And they were saying, listen, your data is not good enough. And also, don't make parents worry for no good reason. And here we are 6 years later. And I hope that Jean, I think we're on a first name basis now.
We love you, Jean.
We love you, Jean. I hope that she is having a celebration. It's kind of a sad celebration because of what she was right about. But she should feel very vindicated now because the data is there. And she's just come out with a new book on it, and we will link to that book in our show notes so that people can go and check out the research themselves. It's not just that the rates of reported feelings have changed, but it's the rates of the behaviors that are associated with anxiety, depression, and loneliness. And so that is ER visits for self-harm. That's attempted suicides, that's completed suicides. These things are markedly on the rise. And the data now ties that stuff back to cell phone usage,
Yes,
social
it
media.
does. Part of what she was getting attacked for was the whole correlation versus causation, right? People saying, okay, this might be correlated, but we can't prove that it's causing these things. And it was funny because I was listening to probably that same episode where they, remember in the 80s, I think it was the 80s and 90s where they blamed comic books. Remember when they said comic books were making kids angry?
Right.
Or some of the magazine covers were creating like more violence and it was all debunked. Right. It was proven to be incorrect. And she got a lot of heat for that saying, well, maybe social media is just like the comic books used to be.
Right. That people are generally skeptical of new technology, and they've been blaming young people's behavior on things as far back as like radio dramas.
Exactly.
On the radio and television and violent video games. And some of these things have borne out and a lot of them haven't. But this one bears out. The evidence is really, really clear here.
It's strong evidence.
It is.
It's there. So clearly, we know, you and I know, there's enough evidence to support that social media and the usage of it is having a very negative impact on our youth. So let's go back a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. And talk about the start of it all.
Okay.
Do you remember when you first got on social media or your first experience with it?
Okay, I do. But my story is a little bit different because I graduated in May of 2004.
Okay.
And so
right when Facebook came out.
Right. Facebook came out in February, and it was only at Harvard. And fun fact, before anyone wants to be like, social media, it's so good for you to connect you to people. This all started this all started with Mark Zuckerberg creating a platform called FaceMash, where people could upload pictures of their classmates and then vote on them about how attractive they were.
What?
Yes.
I don't think I knew that.
Well, fun fact. That's the origin of Facebook. That got shut down because he was using Harvard's resources to power it, and it caused like a server error. And then he created Facebook. And really, at the beginning, this was limited to first a certain number of college campuses. You had to have a college email.
Yes, you
By
did.
the time that Facebook came around, my campus didn't have it. And it was bizarre to me. Like once they started letting people who were other adults, that was like a year later, and then teens, that was maybe a year later, onto the platform. I'm like, I'm not some fucking weirdo who wants to go on the college website, right? And back in the day, it used to be just like a picture and some basic information about you.
You couldn't like. You couldn't like, you couldn't comment, you couldn't do anything.
Right. There were no likes, there was no wall, there was no news feed. All that stuff rolled out years later. And so it was really just like a picture of you, which you probably cropped from a actual picture that you had from a night out with the girls, right? And then your name, and then maybe the classes that you were in and the clubs that you were in. And the thing that strikes me about this is that, so it was limited to a community. It was a very insular community.
Right. Yep.
It was first aimed at people in the like 18 to 22 range who we know their brains are not totally developed yet, but it's a lot more developed than a high schooler or a, middle schooler, which is what we're dealing with now. And there was a sense of there was actual connectivity and some actual safety in that when you're just essentially, putting a little poster up about who you are. And then people could go and use that information to meet one another.
Exactly.
It was actually, I won't say that this was like with wonderful motivations because we know how it started, but it had a purpose. And it was kind of like, I don't know, like how we used to decorate our doors, outside of our dorms. Your locker, right. It was kind of that. I mean, to be fair, Facebook was super lame for a while.
It was very lame.
Yes, and it was limited to college kids. And so I, as someone who had graduated, just thought it was weird. And I didn't join social media until I was in a show as an adult, and I felt like I needed to be on to promote it.
So what year did you join?
2014.
Okay, so I was one of like the original, right?
Yeah.
I was an OG. But I joined Facebook. I vividly remember it was my senior year of college in either the end of 2004, beginning of 2005, which is funny. I can't remember what I did yesterday, but I remember when I joined Facebook.
Right.
Because I remember entering my college email, which was at Colorado State. So you had to have at colostate.edu. You
Right.
could not join it with at the time, it was all about Yahoo, right? Your
Right.
Yahoo email.
Right.
And I remember getting on it and thinking to myself, this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen.
Right.
What is the purpose of this?
Right.
And I didn't go on to do anything on Facebook for a very long time because then it was MySpace.
Yes.
Don't know if you had MySpace.
I did not have MySpace, but MySpace was the shit for many years.
I
took years
loved MySpace.
Yeah, it took years for Facebook to surpass MySpace. And they started with that, it was that feed.
Yes,
that
it was the
really, I
feed.
think, and the liking and the tagging that started to make Facebook the
So I
king.
want to bring up, because you brought up good old Mark, right? Mark.
Yeah, again, someone else you're on a first name basis with here.
And I don't think that a lot of people know this. And in fact, when we were talking about what we were going to talk about today, and I wanted to do the social media, and I mentioned that Mark, and I can call you Mark, it appeared before Congress.
Right.
And there's massive lawsuits going on across our nation. And you were like, wait, what?
I was like, who's Mark? What are you talking about?
I know. You did. You said, wait, who's Mark? And I go, Zuckerberg. And you're like, oh, I didn't know you guys were on a first name basis.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
You were like, Mark's in trouble. He's testifying before Congress. And I'm like, about what? Like, I don't know what you were talking about.
Which is crazy, right?
Sorry, I checked out. Sometimes I can't with the news. And so I just checked out.
I don't even look at the news, but for some reason, I knew this. And so I just have to tell you this piece right now is because he is getting hounded, as he should. Sorry, strong statement, but he is, as are the CEOs of TikTok and Snapchat. They're all have been appearing before Congress, and there's a lot of movement going on about you need to change what is going on. We have allowed it for long enough, and we have enough evidence to support that this is not good for today's youth. So interestingly enough, Mark stood up, turned to the entire group room. I mean, you can look at this up online. Room of parents who have lost a child because of a mental health struggle, a lot of which was like a bullying from social media. And he stood and he turned away from the microphone and the senators, directly addressed the parents in the gallery and said, I'm sorry for everything you have been through. No one should go through the things that your families have suffered, he said, adding that Meta continues to invest and work on industry-wide efforts to protect children. What's your thought to that?
My thought is that Mark should have listened to our episode on a real apology. Yeah. Because again, there's absolutely no accountability there. There's no, we've done wrong. And I understand
Sorry for what you've gone
I'm
through.
sorry that happened to you. Like, go fuck yourself.
Fuck yourself. That's kind of what I
do
think.
it twice, Mark, because we both said it.
Yeah.
No, but honestly, there's been a lot of information about how toxic this is for kids for a long time. It is not new. And really nothing has been done to change that. And in fact, these platforms just become easier for kids to get on. And they still drive behavior that keeps kids on them for a long time. And us too.
Well, exactly. And so now let's fast forward to where we are today.
Yeah.
And I'm going to speak as a parent here. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but it does not seem like my peers, so other parents around me, are nearly as worried as I am, and or are not even aware of any of the stats, any of the research, any of this information that's out there.
I think it's a mixed bag in my social circle. I will say some people are very concerned about it, and we do have programs at our school that they're saying, you need to look out for these things, but I don't think that people fully understand the risks. And then there's just a whole bunch of people who, even as things have happened that would make you go, ooh, we should limit that media usage, they just let it ride, And I get it. I really do get it because it's really hard to make these decisions. But all of this stuff is happening at the same time that so many adults are saying social media is not good for me. I'm getting off of such and such platform. There's just a lot of dissonance there. I'm not 100% ready to say it's bad for my kid because I'm not 100% ready to go toe to toe with my kid or to stand up against, other parents. And at the same time, I'll say it's bad for me, and I'm just making a choice to improve my mental health. And It's a weird time.
Well, what you're speaking to is the blind leading the blind here, right? So I joined social media when I was a senior in college.
Right.
Now that there was nothing out there about restrictions, guidelines, any information. Then fast forward to first smartphone, which was when I was early to mid 20s.
Right.
There's no information that was ever given, nor did we have research to tell us in our generation how this might become a problem down the road.
Right.
So now you have a generation, us, of parents who, I see it in my office, our age of women who are negatively impacted by social media, trying to have conversations with their children about the negative implications of social media, why they themselves have no idea the negative implication. It's a mess.
Because we didn't experience this as children. We had what I would call a normal childhood, where we were out running around with our friends, where we had
drinking hose water.
Yes, we were. I drank that hose water.
I did too. It's probably why I have autoimmune issues.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's probably why you have a strong immune system.
Oh, okay. We'll go with that one.
Yes. So we didn't go through this. We didn't go through our awkward middle school years having our peers able to post an embarrassing picture of us at any time.
Do you want to hear a story really quick about that?
Probably
can
not.
I just, can
Yes,
I tell
you
it to
should.
you? I hate to cut you off while you're saying it, but I have to tell you this because one of my teens told me that because of this Snapchat, which again, Snapchat is social media,
Right.
but Snapchat, this poor girl, she's 15 years old, comes out of the bathroom and her tampon or whatnot had leaked. And so she had evidence of that on her jeans. And this girl took a picture and sent it to the entire school. I'm talking 3,000 students.
Oh my God.
Who got a picture of that. Now, sit with that for a minute because I did a lot of stupid shit in high school.
Right.
And I can only imagine what would have happened if, in my worst moments, my most embarrassing moments, if that got blasted.
Right.
To everybody, all of your peers.
Right. I mean, I don't know how I could handle that as an adult. So then I think about trying to do that when you're 13, and you would have felt like you were going to die from embarrassment if that had happened at 13 and 3 people saw, and then you went home and you could cry with your mom, and then, you just had to cocoon for a little bit and then go back to school and try to pretend it didn't happen. But to have that picture go out to all those people, for it to be talked about 24 hours a day, and then have to go and it's still top of mind until someone else gets embarrassed. I don't know how they handle that.
I don't either. And I think, what are you seeing, right? You have a teenager.
Yeah.
You have a 13-year-old. And with his peers,
Yeah.
and then with the teens that I see, what are you noticing about this generation?
Okay, so this is actually a big one and a personal one for us. And I'll keep the details vague, but I saw the direct impact of Snapchat specifically when we were hanging out with a family that we've hung out with a lot. And one of my children and one of their children were very close. And for years have just been able to talk to each other, and there's a little love interest there, but it was really easy. And we went over to have dinner at their house one night, and it was really weird. The vibe was off between them, to the point where, my child is kind of, I don't know, bumping around, and it was awkward. And so I said, "What happened?" And he said, "Well, the other child got Snapchat today and didn't care that I was here and was connecting with people who weren't here instead." And it was really heartbreaking. My child definitely understood that because they don't have that platform, they were old news. And it sucked.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I walked into our local coffee shop the other day with my daughter, and she gets very annoyed by my many comments that I make. But I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this group of, 6, probably 13-year-olds. They were definitely not high school. Not one of them was interacting with the other, all staring at their phones. And I have heard a lot of parents say, well, you just have to adapt. Like, this is it. This is how this new generation is.
Right.
And it's not correct.
Right.
And we have the statistics to show that we are literally causing harm to this generation with these devices and these platforms.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of times parents in our generation feel, I mean, we haven't been through what our kids have been through, and we're trying to understand them. And then we feel like, you know, the Pandora's box has been opened, like that this has happened and that there's nothing we can do. And that's not true. It just can't be true because the risks are so high.
Exactly.
So a big thing that we've both mentioned is that we've seen the social bonds between teens disintegrate. I mean, one of the researchers that I was listening to said this is an atomic bomb for teens' social worlds. And it happened truly overnight.
It did.
It went from what Jean, my best friend, had said was that from the 70s until like 2010, the amount of time that teens spent with their peers away from their parents had stayed pretty consistent. And then first in 2004, it started to decline. And in 2010, it went off the cliff. And you think about that, like how important and vital that was to us to develop socially, to be away from our parents and to be with our peers and to be figuring shit out. That's how you learn how to adult and be a human and be in a relationship and work things out when they're hard and, you know, have big feelings, get your heart broken and get it fixed again. Like all of that stuff happens. People aren't doing that anymore. They're just not. And so then we have all of these kids with social anxiety.
Big time social anxiety. They don't even know how to have a conversation.
Right. And they don't have the basic skills to just truly connect, you know? And then you think about these poor kids going off to college and that just continuing, and then it's their 20s and it continuing, and, you know, instead of going on dates, they're on dating apps, and it just like, it breaks my heart.
It is heartbreaking. I was telling one of the teens I work with who is terrified to make a phone call.
Yeah.
Literally terrified to make a phone call. And I sat there and I said, you know what we had to do in my day, right? I've become that person. But when we would call a friend and have to have a conversation with their parents.
Yes, you
Do you
did.
remember? And I remember dialing my like rotary phone, you know, that everybody in the house could hear, and being like, please don't answer, like the parent, and then being like, hi, Mr. So-and-so.
Right.
School's great. Yeah, thank you. Can I talk to Erica now? And it forced you to have uncomfortable conversations anytime you wanted to contact your friend.
Yes. And it meant that parents were involved in the social lives of their kids.
They knew what was going on.
You knew exactly who they were talking to.
Yes, you
Because
did.
even when you stretched that cord and you were hiding in the bathroom, like your parents already knew.
They knew.
Who was on the phone.
They could also get on the phone and like actually listen.
Yeah, they were probably picking it up in the other room.
Totally.
Yeah.
I remember all of that. Okay, so we're kind of highlighting here a lot of things that I am hoping draw awareness to something that's going on. But I want to tap into really quick what we're doing as parents. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I don't know fully how to navigate this landscape.
Right.
I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And it truly is something that keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
So what are you doing, or what? Yeah, because you're in it right now. You got a smartphone user.
Well, so one of the things that we know that's a huge risk factor. So we talked about the social risk factors, and one of the other ones is just sleep. Sleep is a huge problem when kids have access to social media all the time. And so because lack of sleep is a key factor in development of anxiety, depression, and self-harm.
That is proven.
Yeah, this is something we know.
For like decades proven.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so when your teenager is getting less sleep than they need, they're difficult to deal with. They're more emotional. And then I think a lot of times what happens is we're like, it's not worth the fight. So just do what you want on your devices. And it becomes very circular. So for us, one of the things that we're doing is we have very strict boundaries around where the phone can be. And it is on the kitchen counter.
Yes.
And it does not go into the rooms ever. And it's not allowed to be used at night. And it's really not supposed to be used in the morning. And honestly, what's happened now is I'm like, no, don't touch that all the time. Basically all the time.
Is it exhausting?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Although I will say, if you're very strong with it at the beginning, it's easier.
Okay.
Than if you start like, here's your phone and
setting firm boundaries at the beginning.
Right. And we don't allow social media.
Absolutely not.
So my son, who's the 13-year-old, he's got a lot of pressure to be on Snapchat specifically. That's what people do. He actually told me now that he's, he's a volleyball player. There's a lot of girls at the club, right? And girls at the club. And they will ask, like, can I have your Snap? And he's not sure how to handle it. He'll tell them, I don't have it, but then they don't believe him. And it's just, that is the way that kids start to make interactions. And we know how damaging it is, so we don't let him have it. But then I'm caught between this friggin' rock and a hard place because I'm weighing out. So am I harming him socially by not letting him have access to this? And then, okay, I go back and say, well, I'm not harming him socially because I know that socially he'll do better in the real world. You know what I mean? I'm trying to hold all of this.
Well, and that's why I think I'm hopelessly optimistic that things will change before my daughter, because she's my older one, right, has a smartphone. But she even, the other day, this little boy came up to her. She looks a little bit older than she is because she's taller. And said, hey, can I have your Snap? And it was hysterical because she turned around and looked at him. She goes, how old do you think I am? And I was like, girl, all right. And then she was like, Mom, can I have a phone? And I'm like, go away, get out of here.
Get out of
child.
here.
We have this conversation every day. You may not have a smartphone. You're not getting a phone until you go to middle school. And guess what? It's another thing I'm going to have to take away from you.
It literally, the one reason I like having it is I can be like, I'm going to take your phone. But because my 13-year-old does not have constant access, nor does he have social media, he can be like, I don't care. And then I'm like, fuck, I was really hoping that this was going to be
totally
my
backfired
power
on you. He's just playing you.
He is. 100%.
He's totally playing you. You know, I think some of the things that I want to just speak to really quick before we wrap today's episode is just that, listen, half the reason that social media and why all of these CEOs are standing before Congress right now is they have been allowed to put a product out there that actually has rewired brains and created addictive behaviors. That is proven, right? So that's where these YouTube shorts are getting problematic is every single time you swipe up, you get a dopamine hit. And if you think about dopamine from an addiction standpoint, you need more and more and more to create the same high.
Right.
So now a lot of people are saying something has got to change because we have created these addictive patterns in our children. And so that is why when we're talking about sleep and the lack of sleep that these kids are getting, well, yeah, they're sitting there and getting dopamine fixes.
Right. And when you get dopamine at a very highly concentrated amount and a constant flow from being on social media, then the things that would normally give you dopamine in your real life, like connecting with a friend or it being a beautiful day or you eat something delicious, right? Those things don't hit anymore.
No, they don't work.
And so then you're depressed. And we go, I wonder why everyone's depressed. And it's right there.
It's right there.
Can I tell you just 2 more things that I'm struggling with as a parent and the things that truly, truly keep me up at night about social media?
Please do.
So one of these things is that I'm trying to, and I have to, instruct my children to live in a world where everything that they do can have consequences beyond their imagination and can live forever, right? Like you fuck up one time. And actually, I'll tell them, I'm not saying this because I think you're bad, and I don't say this because I think you're dumb. I say this because I know what it's like to be a kid. I cannot count. It is innumerable. The number of things that I would do that would get me canceled right now. That I would do that, it is an innumerable amount. And so I tell them, I know that you're a kid. And I think if you do normal kid stuff and someone catches it and puts it on the internet, you could have ramifications beyond your wildest imagination. And we've heard horror stories, as you know.
Horror stories.
I'm trying to tell them that. And at the same time, needing to keep a door open to them and say, but no matter what you do, you need to come to me. No matter what you do, I will always love you. We will take care of you. We will walk through this with you. And I'm trying to hold this going, how do I communicate that every single thing you do could have life-altering ramifications and still you don't end your life. come to me, come to me. Because both of these things are true.
With an underdeveloped brain that has no impulse control yet.
Right.
So saying to your kid, right, don't do that one thing that could ruin your life.
Right.
And you're telling it to a brain who actually lacks the ability,
Right.
no ability to control an impulse when it comes.
Yeah. And no ability to apply one specific example to a broader set of circumstances.
Exactly.
So you can't, as a parent, be able to lay out every single potential circumstance that they could find themselves in. And so we have to have this blanket. Like, I can't say to my kids anymore, I'm the authority, you should be afraid of me, right? It's not a cat and mouse game like it used to be with our parents. It can't be. So if you take anything from this as a parent trying to navigate this, it's this. You have to keep the door open with your kids. You cannot sit on high and say, don't do these things or you'll get in trouble. You say, don't do these things because the consequences are so big, and I'm here. You have to come to me. Because if they don't feel that they can come to you with any and everything that happens, you could face a true child trying to handle a situation that's out of control on their own, and they may not have the impulse control to not harm or end their own life.
It's so heavy. This won't be the last time that we talk about this topic, because it is a really big one. And I will say before I close today is that, our parents worried when we left the house, right? Going to like that high school party or going to that. You hand your child a phone, a smartphone, and they have access to the entire world.
And the entire world has access to them.
Exactly. And that's what I want to end on. As we wrap up today's episode, we want to thank you for joining us on this journey of awareness and hopefully empowerment. Navigating social media with our children is no easy feat, but by shedding a light on the challenges and sharing some of our strategies, we're taking a step towards making what we hope is a really positive change. So remember, you're not alone on this journey.